The justice system is supposed to be this pillar of clarity, right? A place where the rules are clear and things make sense. But what happens when you pull on one little thread and the whole thing seems to unravel? Well, today, we're pulling on one of those threads. So let's just start with this. Imagine you're on the phone trying to get a straight answer from the court, and the person on the other end asks you, "Is that adding up now?" I mean, it's such a strange question, isn't it? It kind of makes you think that whatever they said before, well, maybe it didn't add up. And that's exactly where our investigation begins. Think of any complex machine. It comes with a manual, a blueprint that tells you exactly how it's supposed to work. The justice system is no different. But this whole explainer is about that huge, confusing gap between the manual and what actually happens when you try to use the machine. It's about a moment where the system's own blueprint and the real-world explanation just completely fail to connect. Okay, let's get right to the heart of it. This entire mystery, this whole contradiction, it all kicks off with a single, simple phone call. A call that was supposed to clear things up, but ended up revealing a system that can't even seem to explain itself. So picture this. Someone calls the court registry. The goal is simple enough. Hey, can you just walk me through the process for a Section 810 peace bond? You'd expect a pretty clear 1, 2, 3 answer, right? But nope. Instead, the conversation spirals into this maze of contradictions, shining a massive spotlight on a fundamental gap, a gap in the system's own perception of how it's supposed to operate. So to figure out where things really went off the rails, we have to back up a bit. First, we need to understand how the system is supposed to work. Let's take a look at the official blueprint. Meet the key players and see what their job descriptions are according to the law. First up, we've got the courts. Now, their role is pretty clear. They're the institution with the power to make decisions and apply the law. Basically, they're the referees. Their job is to look at the rules and make the final call. That's their lane. Next on the roster is the Crown, and their job is super specific. They're in charge of prosecutions. Think of them as the gatekeepers. They're the ones who look at a case and decide, yep, we're going to prosecute this, and then they argue it in court. And finally, our third player, the police. Their job is to be out there on the front lines, maintaining order, enforcing laws, and, crucially, investigating and gathering information to bring into the system. So you see, we've got three very distinct roles. The courts are the referees, the Crown are the prosecutors, and the police are the investigators. At least, that's the intended structure. That's how it works on paper. Okay, so we've met the players. Now let's look at the actual playbook for the legal tool at the center of all this confusion. That's Section 810 Peace Bond. What does the official rulebook actually say you're supposed to do? But first, what even is a peace bond? Well, the key thing to remember is that it's not about punishing someone for something they already did. It's what's called preventative justice. It's a court order with a bunch of conditions designed to prevent a problem from happening in the future. It's all about what might happen, not what has happened. And the official process to get one? Well, according to the legal guides, it's actually really clear. Step 1, you swear a formal document called an information. Step 2, that document goes directly to a judge for review. And then, only if the judge thinks there's a case, we get to Step 3. The court issues a summons. See the pattern here? The court, the judge, the court. It is 100% a court-driven process. That is the clear, stated intention of the law. All right, so we've got the players, and we've got the official rulebook. Now for the moment of truth. Let's put that rulebook side by side with what was actually described on that phone call, because this is where the whole thing just breaks down. This is the gap, the breakdown in comprehension made crystal clear. Okay, just look at this comparison. It's absolutely wild. On the left, you have the official way. It starts with a sworn document that goes to a judge. But on the right, the process described on the phone, it starts with the police just issuing something called an undertaking. And get this, that piece of paper from the police already has a court date on it. The process being described completely jumps over that crucial first step of a judge reviewing anything. It's a totally different process. And this brings us to the most jaw-dropping moment of the entire call. When the caller pointed out this exact contradiction, wait, how can the police be setting court dates before a judge has seen anything? The court employee, the person whose job it is to explain this stuff, actually said they didn't know. Just think about that. The gap between perception and reality, between the intention of the law and the practice, was so wide that an employee inside the system couldn't explain it. Their own comprehension just stopped. So you might be thinking, okay, that's one really confusing phone call. What's the big deal? Well, it is a huge deal, because this gap between the law on the books and how it's actually applied in the real world has serious consequences for every single person who has to interact with the justice system. Let's break down why this matters so much. Look, when a system can't even follow its own rules, it throws up massive walls, making it nearly impossible for regular people to get access to justice. This isn't just messy paperwork, it's a complete failure of intention. The intention of the law is a fair process led by a judge, but the perception and the reality on the ground is something else entirely. And when the process is that murky, that opaque, how can you possibly hold it accountable? Ultimately, this massive gap just destroys public trust because it reveals a system that, frankly, doesn't even seem to understand itself. And that leads us to this final, really important question. A clear, predictable, and honorable legal process is supposed to be the bedrock of our society. It's supposed to serve the public. But when that process becomes so tangled and convoluted that even its own employees can't explain how it works, you have to stop and ask, who is it truly serving?